All right, so we are live for this live special that I have going on for you guys as we review Thrilla in Manila. Now, why is this significant? The reason why this is significant is because not only did it change Muhammad Ali's career trajectory for one, but not only that, also influence the current trajectory of the modern combat sports promotions of today. Now, for example, I want to give you a clear example of that particular influence. You take a look at the UFC today. Obviously, it's done business with the Emiratis. Now the Saudis are in the boxing game and things of that nature. Well, if you look at Thrilla in Manila back in the days, if you remember, it was done to try to promote the Philippines in a positive light. And we're going to go into that later on, which, by the way, has a lot of political implications because guess what? This particular channel that you're watching right now, it is an MMA channel, but we don't just cover MMA. We also cover boxing because it's literally a cousin sport of mixed martial arts and everything in between. So that can't be denied. So another thing that we're going to talk about, obviously, is you take a look at this poster that you have in front of you right now. You have Ali versus Frazier in Thrilla in Manila back in September 30th, which, by the way, interestingly enough, took place on a Tuesday, and it says so right there. Now, obviously, this weekend's particular fight with Anthony Joshua and Francis Ngannou also in adding to that UFC 299. By the way, I urge you guys to take a look at my full card predictions and review on that card. I talk about that particular all the fights in that particular card actually with visuals and all of the fighters and their past highlights and things of that nature. I urge you guys to take a look at it because it's happening this weekend, and this is the reason why I'm doing this special of Ali versus Frazier in the Thrilla in Manila and how it relates to the modern combat sports landscape of today. And in particular, as I had mentioned about the Philippines, well, we're going to get to that in a little bit. But as I had mentioned, it was used as a way to somehow create some kind of positive light to the country as what many journalists would sort of consider as quote unquote sports washing. So that's something that a lot of people accuse the Saudis of, the Emiratis, and all these other regimes, such as even you take a look at as we look at all the Abu Dhabi cards in the UFC, their past dealings with, let's say, the Emiratis going back since 2010, and the deal they have going on from 2010 all the way to 2028. You've even taken a look at Callum Smith. He's even before this Francis Ngannou, Tyson Fury, and Francis Ngannou and Anthony Joshua and Jake Paul and Tommy Fury fights. You even had Callum Smith win a Super 6 series, and guess where? Saudi Arabia. Many people don't really remember that. And what you're seeing to the left of you, cage side, is the site of UFC 2010, which was UFC 112, featuring obviously Anderson Silva, Damian Maia, BJ Penn, and Frankie Edgar, in which Frankie Edgar had upsetted BJ Penn, where BJ Penn at the time had really legitimately only lost George St. Pierre as a challenger while being a champion at a lower weight class from 155 as a champion going up to 170 to take on George St. Pierre. And then obviously you had the likes of Matt Hughes taking on and was it Renzo Gracie? Yeah, Renzo Gracie that he took on in that fight, right? Which he absolutely obliterated with leg kicks. But great on Gracie. He came out to some Abu Dhabi local music And obviously, he's friends with the royal family there. He teaches their armed forces, jujitsu, and things of that nature. So you see, there's a lot of political implications with a lot of these particular events. And then you've seen Conor McGregor, he fought out there with Dustin Poirier. These guys literally fought in the morning time and were able to chill all throughout the afternoon after they had fought local time in their area. And that Abu Dhabi relationship can now span into the modern age of Islam Makhachev as the champion, in which ultimately all those cards have now been headlined by him. The Volkanovski card, which they did in Australia, second time around, they did in Abu Dhabi, the first time he won the title against Charles. So he's been a main staple there and fought in Khabib's undercards when Khabib was the champion at the time. So these are all really interesting facts to take a look at. And of course, this is all to build your country's infrastructure and build value to, let's say, your real estate property in your area, raise your economic tourisms and things of that nature, make your place a lot more desirable, which ultimately I think creates a certain cost of living situation that may be harder for the less fortunate, but obviously an attraction for the wealthy around the world. And we take a look at other past examples of, let's say, the Rumble in the Jungle fight with Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. Now, why is that particular fight important? Because obviously, just like Sean O'Malley going into this rematch with Marlon Chito Vera, Sean O'Malley was able to beat the champion at the time, go in there as the linear champion, and then facing the guy that he had lost to previously, just like lost previously to to uh, Joe Frazier. But then Joe Frazier came and lost to George Foreman, and as a result, created the Rumble in the Jungle. Now, why was that important? Well, you got to understand it was very important for the president of that country to look good. And I'm not going to mention any countries or any leaders or anything like that. I let you use your imagination, but obviously you've seen where the World Cup took place. It was great for their country. Why not? This is what countries do. This is just what you do if you want to build an infrastructure to your country. And guess what? The Philippines at the time wasn't any different than that. So if we take a look at the beginning of the Thrilla in Manila, it was the third and final boxing match between the undisputed champion Muhammad Ali and former champion Joe Frazier for the heavyweight championship of the world. The bout conceded after 14 rounds on October 1st, 1975, at the Arena Coliseum in Quezon, Philippines, which is located in the Metro Manila area. So, again, why did they take place in that particular part of the world? Well, for the same reason why the Saudis wanted to have Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury. And by the way, as we're looking at it in hindsight and we're looking into the current landscape of this week's fight with Anthony Joshua and Francis Ngannou, it just baffles me to think that during this time, we looked at this as a freak show fight. And by the way, the Saudis were okay with it. They did do the Jake Paul and the Tommy Fury fight. So they're not opposed to, quote unquote, the freak show fights. But now they've decided they're going to go into a different route, such as, let's say, make matches with the likes of Beterbiev and Bivol, which, by the way, is a very 50-50 matchup. And by the way, a very good matchup in terms of competitive architecture. So nonetheless, they took that route. And you take a look at the Francis Ngannou fight with Tyson Fury, it all surprised us and made us realize, man, you know what? This guy is on a whole nother level, which is why the Sheikh of the Saudi Arabia had joked around with Francis Ngannou saying, I want to see somebody stop you. And then Francis said, well, I'd love to see you try. And there's some truth to that joke, because in reality, we've really seen how much of a force Francis Ngannou is. So once again, let's try and understand the context of why that is important. But anyways, so back to Manila as we take a look at the visual of the streets of Manila in some random YouTube video. But nonetheless, shout outs to Exploria who's providing this footage. But anyways, so it was a 14-round fight. The contest it derived from Ali's rhythm boasting fight and a killer and a thriller and a chiller when I got the gorilla in Manila, as they say. So the bout was universally regarded, by the way, as probably one of the most brutal fights in the history of boxing. So a little background on this, right? So obviously the first fight between Frazier and Ali, which was the fight of the century, took place in 71, Madison Square Garden. So Frazier at the time had beaten Ali with absolute ease, right? And because you got to take a look at the context of that situation, Ali was coming back from a retirement, right? He had protested and said what he had said about the government and this and that, and then it took away his license, or at least it took him away from the championship picture, and he just wasn't fighting the best guys in the world, so he lost. So as a result, after that, uh the rivals had met again in a rematch. Neither was champion, and Frazier had suffered a stunning second round KO against George earlier that year. Ali had two controversial split decisions against Ken Norton. And in the promotion, in that appearance before the second fight, the two had scuffled in an ABC studio. If you guys remember that, it was with Howard Cosell, which at the time was considered literally the Ariel Hawani of his day, right? If you guys can even picture that. So the controversial aspects of that fight in the second round, Ali struck Frazier with a hard right, backed him up. The referee at the time, which was Tony Perez, had stepped in between the fighters, signifying the end of the round. And even though there was about 25 seconds left, he gave Frazier a time to regain his bearings and continued fighting. So Perez also failed to contain Ali's tactics of illegally holding and pulling down his opponent's neck into clinches, which helped Ali to smother Frazier and gain the 12-round decision. This became a major issue in selecting the referee for the Thrilla and Manila fight. So he obviously didn't get that. So here we go. This is what I was saying earlier about what a lot of these journalists nowadays call sports washing, right? So the president of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos, sought to hold the bout in Metro Manila and sponsored it in order to bring what? Attention in the Philippines from around the world. In the lead up to the Manila fight, as well as each of their own two encounters, Ali had verbally abused Frazier. So Ali would call Frazier what? A gorilla, and would use it as the basis of his rhyme, where, as I was just saying earlier, it would be the killer and the thriller and the chiller when I get the gorilla in Manila, which he chanted while punching a gorilla doll. And Ali had told the reporter at the time, Schwab, that it was part of a long-standing pre-fight strategy of his. I like to get a man mad because when a man is mad, he wants you so bad that he can't think. So I would get a man mad. And this is a strategy that had appeared to work in Ali's favor in his defeat against George Foreman. Basically made him swing for the fences, and that was that. So Frazier had the skill, the confidence, the stamina, and the character to preserve in difficult circumstances. So this guy, Dick Wolf, who was the member of Frazier's team in Manila, had said, with all the absolute of residue of anger that Joe had from what had happened before the first fight, what had happened before and the second fight, and after these fights, Joe was ready to lay his life on the line, and he did. So Ali's preparation were to upset before the fight when he introduced his mistress, Veronica Porsche, as his wife to Fernand and Emil de Marcos, who, by the way, at the time was the president of the Philippines. Obviously, the ones that had brought the fight there, because guess what? It makes them look good that they were able to bring a big fight with this magnitude in their country. And it is no different than any world leaders today. Unfortunately, Joe Biden is one of those guys that really doesn't have a spine, so he doesn't really like sports and combat sports in particular. So he's not going to try to put America in that type of pedestal. But luckily enough, fighting has always been big in America, so we don't need him for that. So this angered, I believe, Ali's wife at the time was Kalia Ali, who saw the introduction to the television back in the States and subsequently flew to Manila, where she had enraged her husband in a prolonged shouting match at a hotel suite. And by the way, very similar to, let's say, the modern interpretation of maybe Krishan and Blueface, perhaps, or maybe not, or maybe somewhere in between that reality or not at all. Right in the comment section below, let me know. But anyways, in Frazier's camp, trainer Eddie Foch made a decision that the throngs of the people and the tension that was steaming hot in the city were a poor environment to prepare in. Thus, Frazier completed his training for what was to be a final shot at the championship in a lush, quiet setting in the mountainous outskirts of the city of Manila. By the way, very similar to Manny Pacquiao in where he trains 3 hours away from Manila. Let's get another shot of Manila real quick. By the way, 3 hours away from Manila and into Baguio. That's where Manny Pacquiao trains. Why does he train there? He feels that it's a lot better for his health than, let's say, the glam in the city of Metro Manila. Whereas you would imagine Ali didn't have a problem with that, with the type of personality that he has. There, he would have led a Spartan existence, often sitting for hours in a contemplative state in preparation for the bout. So the fight strategy that went on with that, Frazier's cornerman, Eddie Foch, was concerned about preventing Ali from the repeating illegal tactic holding of Frazier behind the neck to create extended clinches. So basically similar to what you would see in a Muay Thai clinch. Ali used his tactic to keep Frazier from getting on the inside, enabling him to get the needed rest during his victory in their second meeting. Foch claimed that Ali had done this about 133 times in a fight, and he wasn't warned at all. He also had done so in the first fight in their meeting while facing a taller Foreman in his win over him in Zaire, leaving no doubt, by the way, a fight that I had mentioned earlier, leaving no doubt the intentions for the upcoming bout in Manila. Sensing trouble, Foch moved to the block Ali Foreman's ref, Zach Clayton, as a referee by enlisting the aid of Philadelphia Mayor Frank Rizzo. How about that? Now it gets deeper than that. The mayor refused to let Clayton out of his duties as a Philadelphia civil service employee to go referee the fight. Foch also warned Filipino authorities that Ali was going to mar what was going to be a great event for the nation by constantly tying up Ali, by Frazier being tied up illegally. By the way, they weren't going to do anything. The Philippines, I don't think, was going to do anything, considering that Ali was a big star back then, so highly implausible. But anyways, he advised him to assign one of their countrymen to the referee at the bout, stating that this would reflect very well on the Philippines and a source of pride for their people to somehow have the fair play and the justice going on in the boxing ring. So Foch and the Filipino officials who had bought heavily into the idea brushed it aside. And by the way, complaints from Don King that a Filipino referee would be too small to handle the heavyweight fight. What is Don King insinuating there? Is he insinuating some kind of racist comment as to say that certain people can't be of a certain size? I don't know, Don King. I don't know. But anyways, this resulted in the appointment of Filipino referee Carlos Padilla Jr. So Foch and his assistant, George Benton, believed that the key to winning the fight would be for Frazier to persistently attack Ali's body, including when Ali attempted to cover up his torso along the ropes. Ben said, my expression to Joe was, you had to do that to stay on top of him and hit the son of a biatch anywhere and hit him on the hips, hit him on the legs, hit him anywhere. Frazier's strategy followed the boxing Azayam, saying, if you kill the body, the head will die, as he described. Once I've stopped the organs, when those kidneys and liver stop functioning, you can't move so fast. And the organs in his body have to be functioning. If you slow them down, You cannot do what he wants to do. Hitting below the waist, according to the rules of the sanctioning bodies, is equally as illegal as holding behind of the head. Huh. Try saying that in the Dubois and the Usyk fight. But anyways, the Ali camp used the championship as a leverage in negotiations and won out two key points. So he wanted a ring size of 21 feet. 6.14 meters square allowed him the ability to move around the circle if he chose. And it would enable him to use his superior boxing skills to his advantage. Because guess what? He's a mover. He also has the presence of 8-ounce gloves, which were smaller and less padded, and those would be used in heavyweight bouts. According to Ali's ring doctor, guy named Ferdy, Ali planned to take advantage of Frazier's reputation as a slow starter, use it as his reach and hand and speed to attack Frazier exclusively with punches to his head early in the rounds and in hopes of scoring a knockout or at the very least doing enough damage to Frazier to prevent him from fighting effectively above and beyond. So let's take a look at the fight in this particular matter at hand, right? Because obviously we're still in Manila in this particular regard, right? So let's see here how the fight went. In order to accommodate international viewing audience, the fight took place at 11 a.m. local time, though served in business interests of the fight and detrimental to the fighters. By the way, not too foreign in today's ideas. I mean, you look at the British fans nowadays, right? You look at the times that these guys have to stay up and watch these cards. And even if you're watching, let's say, a UFC card that takes place in Asia, I remember back in the days when they had that Macau fights, when they had fights that were taking place in China and Singapore, like they still do during this day. I remember you'd have to wake up very early in the morning to catch the prelims, and then the main card was somewhere at 4 a.m. or something crazy like that. And these were all fights that were taking place in Asia at the time at the UFC cards, right? So that's what you had to do. So, anyways, though it served the business interests of the fight, it was detrimental to the fighters. Ali's ring physician, Ferdy, said that 11 a.m. in the thickness of the night was still there, but cooked by the sun. So you got a hot, boiling atmosphere. Dennis Menz, who was part of Frazier's contingent, said that the conditions inside the aluminum-roofed Philippine Coliseum, it was so intensely hot. Okay, so they were describing how hot it was. And then the fighters in her cornerman at the center of the ring, for the referee's instructions, Ali continued to verbally assault Joe Frazier, finishing the taunt, "You don't have it. Joe, you don't have it. I'm going to put you away." And in response, Frazier smiled and said, "We'll see." And that's usually what a lot of people do when they're getting hit really hard during a fight. They just either shake their head and say, "No, you didn't really hit me." But in reality, they did. So Ali was sharp early and slow starting Joe Frazier, not bobbed and weaved his way inside of Ali's jab. Ali won the first two rounds. He kept Frazier in the center of the ring and landed several straight hands immediately after his jab. Frazier was wobbled or at least knocked off balance by solid punches twice in the early rounds. Now, commenting for the U.S. television audience, Don Dumphy said that Ali's fast hands with sharp shooting, he keeps it his way. Viewing the fight for the first time in some 31 years later, Frazier said, "Too far away and needed to get closer." So Ali also continued to attack his opponent verbally, most notably in the third round when he was performing well and plenty of energy. The referee, Carlos Padilla, said during the fight, Ali would say, two and a three. Jack, be nimble. Jack, be quick. Jack, jump over the candlestick. Is it that you give? Come on, you ugly gorilla. Hit me several times. Ali made circular hand gestures at Frazier to encourage him to get closer. So the third round, Ali begins a rope-a-dope strategy in which he used for support and rest, allowing him to have his opponent expend all of his throwing energy. When it was effective, Ali eventually spinned off the ropes and unleashed a volley of punches in rapid successions. Okay, and during the fifth round, Frazier's timing and rhythm of his bobbing and weaving had improved. He was able to avoid the oncoming fists of his champion for the first time in a fight, landed a few solid hooks to Ali's head. So the net effect that was Ali had become much more exposed for Frazier's most lethal punch was his left hook. So as the bout wore on, it became clear that despite his belief in the utility of the rope-a-dope, when Ali had his back against the ropes, Frazier had the advantage. Joe had some of his moments, but Frazier may have evened the round just about 30 seconds left to go. So at the close, at the very tiring ninth round, a visibly tired Ali went back to his corner, told his trainer, "Man, this is the closest I've ever felt in dying." In the opposite corner, Frazier was suffering from pronounced swelling to the face as a result of accumulation of scores of punches exclusively aimed at his head, increasing hampering his vision after an 11th round in which Ali frequently and Eddie Futch confronted his charge, asking him, "What's the right hand business?" In response, Frazier indicated that he could not see some of the punches he was being hit with. And at this point, Futch gave him what had turned out to be somewhat of a poor advice. He told his fighter to stand right up when approaching Ali rather than continuing his usual bobbing and weaving style. Ali seized upon it immediately into round 12, back to the ropes, and he threw as many punches, both with his hands, landed accurately, still more damage to Frazier's limelight eyesight. Adding to Frazier's problem was his corner's inability to maintain a functional iceberg. Okay, and by the 13th round, he was a combatant who could barely see. And this was according to a British sports writer, Frank McGee, ringside in the Daily Mirror, as he describes the final rounds. "The main turning point of the fight came very late, and it was midway through the 13th round when one of the tremendous right hand smashes and sent the gum shield sailing out of Frazier's mouth. The sight of this man actually moving backwards seemed to inspire Ali. I swear he hit Frazier with 30 tremendous punches, each one as hard as those knocked out George Foreman and Zaire during the 14th round. He was dredging up all his last reserves to power up to make sure that he didn't have it in the 15th round." So seeing the results of round 14, Eddie Futch decided to stop the fight in between rather than risking a worse or similar fate in Frazier in the 15th. Frazier protested and stopped in, "I want him, boss, I want him." And basically, that was a great decision on the part of Joe Frazier's camp, because let's face it, there's a lot of guys these days that just let the fights go and let their fighters go out there and suffer, and as a result could have consequences that you may not see until later on, which is unfortunate. But that was the fight with Ali versus Frazier and a review of it. And well, the legacy of that, as I was saying, the Philippines' first multicultural shopping mall was named after Muhammad Ali as a tribute to his victory, now called the Ali Mall, which is located in Quezon City. Another legacy of this fight was its pioneering communication technology. Obviously, HBO became the first television network in history to deliver a continuous signal satellite broadcasting Thrilla in Manila. This event linking satellites with cable-turned televisions from a retransmitter to program provider, basically. So ESPN's Sports Century ranked at number 5 in the greatest games of the 20th century in 1999. That was all the way back in 1990. 2006, Manny Pacquiao versus Oscar Laros fought in there, and the Philippines was billed to be the Thrilla in Manila 2. 2008, Thrilla in Manila television documentary created that HBO special, and obviously HBO is now out of the boxing game. And that right there literally just concluded the first special ever of Thrilla in Manila in its fight review. And by the way, don't forget to check out all my content leading up to this fight week's predictions, previews, and greatest fights that you could possibly see in this entire week. Francis Ngannou versus Anthony Joshua, UFC 299 Miami. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you guys soon. And that is my 30-minute live special.